one of the reasons that I used to call it 7 years hard labour is that the orchestral manager was no friend to the members of the orchestra who didn't just suck up to him. And he had, I'm sure he had a mean streak in him, because the contract, all of our contracts said we must have 7 days notice of the next week of work. Well, I'm sure nowadays you have or probably just the same in the contract, but you probably get the schedules for a month or more, which allows you to plan a bit. But no, he, I'm sure, resented the fact that he had to put the schedule for a week on Monday, not on the Monday, because if you were off on the Monday you wouldn't get 7 days notice, so he had to put the notice up on the Saturday. And there were all sorts of things we didn't like about his way of dealing with this, and at one point there was something so outrageous that Francis Bradley and I went to see the big boss of Covent Garden. And he just sat there and listened to Francis for about, I imagine, about a quarter of an hour. This is how fluent Francis was. And he said, orchestra, is it? Oh, that's the concern of Mr. Smith. Good morning. And then there were one or two mysterious sackings. One season we put on Berlioz's great opera, and there's one aria that has an enormous clarinet solo, and it was so beautifully played, everybody remarked on it. At the end of that season she got the sack. Nobody could understand. And then he sacked Francis and me, but the backstage conducting staff who do certain amount of the rehearsing of the orchestra, or a lot of the singing rehearsals, they said, oh, we can't do it. They didn't hear about Francis, they heard about me. And he put me on again. And by then, we had another marvellous conductor, Raphael Kubelik, and he started his first season with Othello by Verdi. Wonderful, wonderful opera, provided it's put together really well. And what he did was to have not just the usual orchestral rehearsals, but he had sectional rehearsals of the orchestra, and the same right throughout the production. And when it was put together, it was a wonderful production. And it, in the interim period, before we had a conductor who was music director as well, we just had visiting conductors for 2 or 3 or 4 years. People in the management, especially Maurice Smith, had taken some of the duties into their own hands, and they were not going to give them up. And by the end of the season, Kubelik was a broken man. It was terrible to watch. And I think he just lasted one more season after that. That was a tragedy. And I stayed with the opera until 1960, and in the early summer of 1960, I was asked if I would go and join Philharmonia to be the fourth horn of Alan Civill's quartet, because he had, when Dennis Brain died, he took over as first horn, and it's very usual for a new first horn to develop a section of his making. And nowadays you talk about auditioning for perhaps 2 years before a place is filled. I think my audition was when the Philharmonia, months and months before this, were recording the overture Der Freischütz. And this begins with the horn quartet. And they had rehearsed and recorded with, somebody thought it'd be a good idea, have that horn quartet up in the gallery of the Kingsway Hall. Somebody being just too clever. No. What about outside in the corridor? They tried that. No, of course this all took time. And it came to the end of the day. Friday morning, 10 o'clock, back here in Kingsway Hall to record again. And the fourth horn said, sorry, I've got a date on Friday morning. So they rang me and I went in. And the first half of the session, when you like to think you're warming yourself up, we were re-recording the Swan Lake duet, violin and cello, isn't it? And they did it once, and the horns come in just for the last chord. So I had to sit there, play the last chord. Right, again, and the last one. Righto, gentlemen, that's it. That was the interval. Back after the interval. Red light on, Freischütz overture. No rehearsal or anything. And it was fine. So I like to think that was my audition.